All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. We wanted to do as we do annually and go over our crime stats for 2022. I want to start by introducing the command team, and we'll start from my left and go across.
Good afternoon, Franklin Hayes, Deputy Chief, Crime Strategy Bureau.
Carrie Sloan, Deputy Chief, Detective Bureau.
Board of Police Commissioners, Chairperson Brian Ferguson.
Assistant Chief Fitzgerald, Enforcement Operations.
Assistant Chief David LaValle, Professional Development.
Deshaun Sims, Deputy Chief, Western Operations.
Again, also want to thank the community for the support of this department, and particularly of their support of me the past couple weeks. As many of you know, I was battling my first bout with COVID, hopefully my last, and just a tremendous outpouring of letters and emails and text messages. And I just want to take a moment and say I'm feeling better, and thank you very much. I want to thank the Board of Police Commissioners, our City Council, and our Mayor for assisting us in getting through 2022. Our crime stats, as we're going to talk about, represent some declines and it represents some increases, and we continue to work collaboratively to make our city safer, make our community safer for those who live, work, and play in our town. There's been an 11% reduction in Part 1 violent crime over last year, and that reduction includes a 15% reduction in rape, a 10% reduction in non-fatal shootings, and an 11% reduction in aggravated assaults, and a 7% reduction in robberies. And you'll see a slide here momentarily that depicts those numbers and how they impacted our overall crime in the city. We are proud of those reductions, but we're certainly not bragging. We are dealing with a number of different problems with regards to crime and violent crime in our community. And though we're going to numerically talk through crime stats of 2022, the reality of it is when you have the number of non-fatal shootings and murders that we have, certainly that is nothing to celebrate, but we must do better. We're also seeing a significant uptick even already this year with juvenile crime. Juveniles are engaging in more violent crime. We're seeing teenagers as young as 14 and 15 engaging in violent crime. And it appears to be driven in large part by beefs and conflicts over social media. That's being remedied with weapons, conflicts in the community. Things like that are certainly hard for us to get in front of. I certainly believe that social media needs to have some culpability in what we're seeing in our communities beyond just allowing these things to happen. More to come on that. So as we go through the slides, we can go ahead and start the slideshow. Our homicide overview, as you can see, depicts the whole year. We had one less homicide this year as opposed to last year. And I'm sorry, one more. Thank you. One more homicide. That's a very important point. Thank you there, AC. One more homicide as opposed to last year. And again, when you're talking 300 homicides, one homicide is one too many, but 300 is certainly a significant number in our community. And we have to work together with our community, and we need our community to work with us to assist us in reducing these numbers. Next slide. Our non-fatal shootings, the year ended with a total of 105 less non-fatal shootings than last year. That's significant, and that's a testament to the hard work of the men and women of our department. It's a testament to the proactive work that we've done with our 5-point plan, our data analytics, our data team that provides us with our hotspot policing, and certainly our layered approach with our patrol officers, and then ultimately getting these violent offenders off the street who victimize our community. So that's 105 less. Unfortunately, we didn't see that correlate in the homicide numbers as you would think it would, and we're analyzing what impacts that number. In some instances, we've already identified that we're looking at assault rifles. We're looking at more high-powered weapons systems that are out in our community. So you don't necessarily see that correlation with less non-fatals equating to less homicides. And that's preliminary. That's somewhat anecdotal. We're diving into that to break that number out a little bit more as we go forward. Next. And then we go through the property offenses, and we will, in Part 1 crimes, when you look at the homicide number, 309 as opposed to 308, you look at, and again, that's the 2022 versus 2021. You see the criminal sexual conduct, a 15% decrease, which is extremely significant, hard work, and really providing a layer of comfort with our victims and allowing them to pursue the prosecutorial process, because what you do see in some of these instances is predatory acts and criminal sexual conduct, multiple victims, and it is certainly the relationship with the victims and the work of the investigators in our sex crimes team that directly attributes to that reduction and getting those violent offenders off the street. We look at our robberies, and we see a 7% reduction, again, 1,511 in 2021 and 1,403 for a 7% reduction. Again, benchmarking allows us to say what we've done, how we patrol is significant, it works, it's making an impact, but again, nothing to brag about when you're talking about 1,511 robberies as opposed to 1,403. But it does give us some parameters to look at and see what was working, what will continue to work, and how we can have an even greater impact in 2023. And then our aggravated assaults, which is a very complex data set, involves a number of different crimes that are encapsulated in that one category. Someone uses a weapon in a fight, someone swings a bat at someone, someone throws an item at someone, someone punches someone continuously. There are a number of different ways that you can capture an aggravated assault, and we're looking at an 11% reduction there. And these are, you can look at those metrics and say, well, how did that impact, or what did the department do to impact those numbers? And I think it's proactive policing, engagement, reducing those opportunities for violence, and getting those weapons off the street that are being used impulsively and to victimize our community. As we go forward, we have a huge task in front of us to continue with the downward trend that we see and hopefully make a greater impact with our homicides. We want to make sure that we have an impact with our youth. And as they say often, it takes a village. In large part, policing is a proactive job. By the time we get called, something bad has already happened. And so what we're trying to do is everything that we possibly can to be proactive. And when you're proactive, you know, things don't happen. So it's very difficult to measure the effectiveness until you look at your end of the year stats and things such as that. But we want to be engaged, proactive. We're going to be increasing our patrols this year. Very, very thankful to the mayor for increasing my budget and also paying our officers the new contractual raises that he has provided. And certainly want to thank our union partnership as well for their support in getting the collective bargaining agreements done. That's going to help us recruit, that's going to help us retain, and it's going to allow us to put more officers in our communities, put more officers on patrol, and that proactive approach, I believe, will aid us in further reductions in our crime. And also, we'll be looking at ticket and tows. We'll be looking at opportunities to get these abandoned vehicles off the street, be working with our building safety and engineering department to identify those buildings that are dangerous, where illegal activities are happening. We'll continue to do that. We will continue to look at these businesses that are operating illegally, unlicensed in our community. And what we've directed the team to do as a senior management team is when you go out to these businesses that are hosting these large events and these large parties, there has to be a requirement for safety for our community. We continue to drive our green light partnerships, these businesses that are open late in our communities. They must have a safe environment for the patrons that come to those businesses. Green light is an option, but if they choose not to use green light, they still have to have a layer of safety at those businesses, whether that be their own camera systems, security, But if you're open to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you should be required to provide safety for the patrons that patronize your business. So those are some of the things at a very high level that we'll be working towards and continue to work towards. Our deputy or second deputy chief, Kyra Hope, which is over our community engagement unit, will continue to work with our community leaders, our clergy, our community ambassadors, to ensure that we are collaboratively working together to reduce crime. A lot of proactive opportunities are out there, from job opportunities and a number of other things. In closing, before I take any questions, we've talked about a number of influencers of crime. And I think that this administration has talked ad nauseum about this. We know that you can't arrest your way out of crime. We certainly know that. And we certainly know that there are a lot of influencers. We know that poverty influences crime. We also know that lack of educational opportunities. We also know mental health impacts crime. But two things can be true at once. You can work on those factors, but you can also provide a layer of safety for this community through proactive constitutional policing, and that's what we're going to do. We're not going to stand by and wait for every area to correct itself. We have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to do everything in my power to keep this community safe, and we're going to do that. We're going to be engaged at a high level, at a professional level, and to do everything we can to drive these numbers down even more and to keep our community safe. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Hey, Chief. I guess my first question, as far as closure rates and that kind of thing, as far as solvability, any movement there? I mean, we get a lot of calls from families all the time wondering where their cases stand and that kind of thing. Touch on that. I know you might not have facts and figures, but just in general.
Yeah, and we're constantly working towards that. I just started a cold case unit. We'll be doing some work very soon. We already had a cold case unit. We've expanded our cold case unit. And we're looking at ways that we can solve more cases. And it's not like the investigators don't want to solve the cases. As you see how hard they work and the way that they go about their business, and candidly, the volume that they're dealing with. We're going to be announcing some significant case closures here in the next few days that DC Sloan and her team are working to prepare and brief me out on. But as you know, being around this business a long time, there are a number of different factors that go into the difficulty in solving a particular case. Sometimes it's witness cooperation. Sometimes you hit these spaces with the information where some don't have the confidence to come forward and trust the process. We're looking at all of that. And that is why, we ask, to bring in, sometimes a third party that you can call 1-800-SPEAK-UP, right? And I can't think of the name of it right now. Crime Stoppers, thank you. Lights are on. Crime Stoppers, and that gives you the opportunity to anonymously, give all the information you want. They never use your name. You get a number, and it's anonymized, and there's no way anybody can backtrack it. And we've seen some positive results in that. But there's a number of different things. I know it's a long answer for a quick question. But we're doing everything we can because we want to solve these crimes, because what we do know is that someone commits a crime today, they don't generally say, well, okay, that was it, I'm one and done, I'm done here, I'm not doing it again. So today's witness could be perhaps tomorrow's victim.
And because I have a hot mic, I have to ask something off topic. I'm working on a story today about the young woman found in the grave last week on Detroit's east side. Anything to say on that today, Chief?
Not yet. I'll tell you that they're working it. Again, I got briefed on it today, and I'm being briefed on it daily. We're waiting on a cause of death. The FBI is involved, and they're partnering with our homicide team. And as soon as we know more, you will know more. But it's a wide open investigation. But the cause of death is going to reveal a lot for us as to what happened, and that's something we anticipate happening in the next week or so.
Thanks, Chief.
Hi, Robert DeAndrea, WDET News. Do you have any numbers on if there are more or less self-inflicted gun-related incidents this year compared to prior years?
Yeah, I have the data set. I don't have it with me. We can get that to you. These are preliminary numbers, by the way. They are subject to a subtle change based on UCR data when we report to the FBI, the way that they calculate and the time frames. Simply put, if we report 309 robberies, for example, and someone reports a robbery between now and March, they go in and say that a robbery happened in Detroit during this period of time. You may see an uptick of one or two more. So the numbers are preliminary. I wanted to make sure that I stated that. But you won't see, I think, less than 1%. It was the last time there was a correction. So it's not going to be anything dramatic. We do have self-inflicted gunshot numbers. I don't know if they're greater than they were last year, but we'll provide them to you at the end of this.
And when you spoke of minors, do you have a number of how many minors have been victim of violent crime?
I don't have that. I can get it. I haven't put that necessarily together for this presentation, and I won't be able to provide you with that today. But we can. That's achievable. I mean, we track that type of thing. We just haven't put a data set together for this presentation on that. What we're seeing with our youth right now is an uptick in the violent acts, the perpetration of the crime, more so than we have in times past. And we're trying to get a handle on exactly, what's the origin of that, what's driving that. And I think, in part, it appears to be tied to a lot of very unusual social media conflict and I mean, things as simple as you not liking a particular song. We've got kids that are fighting back and forth over that, and it's just it's very difficult to get a handle on. But I think the answer is for you all to help us have culpability with social media. I mean, you've got these powerful tools that are connecting people across the country, across the world, and what's the oversight? What's the responsibility? And I do think that they play a key part, and they need to step up and have some type of safety parameters around it, or engage law enforcement at a higher level so that we can proactively engage. I mean, we've seen situations where there's a threat to take someone's life, and it's carried out, but there's no communication on the front end to law enforcement from that social media carrier. Yet that same social media provider, if you put the wrong item for sale up, or you say the wrong word from a political standpoint, you get blocked out. But you can threaten to hurt someone or take someone's life, and they don't find that to be as urgent as you selling the wrong item on their platform. I mean, I just think that that's unacceptable.
Hey, Chief. I guess I'll start with something unrelated as well. The body of that Detroit barber, David Woodger, has been identified. I know that there was a hunch it was him. Now we have DNA. Can you talk about that case and where we're at now?
Yeah, again, I'm saying I've been briefed on it this morning, and the deputy chief can confirm that. A very tragic case. And, they're working it. We got the DNA results back. I don't know if you recall, he was found in a burned home, and it took some time to get the information. So they've already started on some of the investigation. There's a lot of factors that they got from the DNA that they'll be working. They've got a crime scene, obviously, a confirmed crime scene and a confirmed victim. And so things should start to move. But anybody who has any information is asked to give us a call because it's a wide open case. DC, did you have anything you want to add to that? Okay.
And just now that he has been identified, is there, I know at the time when his body was discovered, when he was, had died, there was some thought that there could be a possible suspect here. Does this DNA confirmation lead you in a direction of any particular person at this point?
Well, here's what I can say right now. And there's things that I can't get into. I know that the investigators have a couple of possible suspects in mind, and they have an area that they're working to identify the facts and circumstances that they think that led to this. So I'm confident that this case is closable. I just cannot discuss right now. It would be irresponsible for me to get any further than I have. And I will just say that the DNA confirmation will allow them to continue with the investigation, knowing who they are dealing with. But a lot of work went in on the front end while awaiting the DNA confirmation.
And back to the topic at hand, when we're looking at some of these numbers, I feel like sometimes, you know, when we're talking about 15% reduction or 7% reduction, the number, you can get lost in the numbers. When it comes to what you're seeing out in the streets and the cases you're dealing with, what do you want Detroiters to know when you're looking at this data, the direction that we're headed? What is your takeaway from some of these big numbers so we can narrow it down for folks?
Well, I mean, the takeaway is, you know, here's transparently where we are with crime. And though we have had some success, and when you use the term success, you're speaking of a reduction over the year prior, that's not enough. It's still way too violent. We are not satisfied. We are not celebrating in any way. We're just being transparent and reporting the news to the news on where we are as an agency. This team behind me, myself, we're in a constant mode of analysis and preparation to reduce crime in our community. We need the community. We need the community to be part of the solution. This is way too violent. We shouldn't have to live like this. We shouldn't accept this as normal. This level of violence in our community, folks using guns to resolve simple disputes, there's no way to live. And we've got to do everything that we can together, not just the police, but and the police, to reduce crime in our community. It has to be unacceptable, and there has to be accountability across the board. Policing, courts, folks have to, you know, everybody doesn't have to go to jail, but those who commit violent acts, they do. That's the way the process works, and they should go to jail and get off the street before they hurt people. And that's got to happen, and we've got to be okay with accepting that as a remedy.
And everybody, of course, has a role to play. Last question, is there any one tangible thing looking into this new year when you consider the data from last year that you would like to see within your police department or enforcement, anything like that, anything tangible?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and we talk about that a lot. Focus, quality of life issues, safety. Safety being a platform for everyone, not just when something bad happens. We all have to be aware, not nervous or scared, but aware of how our safety is impacted by bad acts of others. And we have to be okay with bringing that information forward to the police department so that we can take action against it. We don't want folks being vigilantes. We don't want people taking matters into their own hands, but we want you to communicate with the police department, bring things to our attention so that we can have a proactive engagement before it becomes a problem.
Thank you, Chief.
Adam from WXYZ. Just wondering if you have any insight into what might have led to the increase in carjackings this past year?
A number of things. We have some preliminary insights, and we continue to dig through that. One is, again, juveniles, young people, carjacking people and trying to, you know, quickly get money, not understanding, you know, what they're doing, not understanding that some of these cases could be taken federally, and we're going to push for these cases to be taken federally. So you'll be doing significant time, and just how dangerous it is. We just see a lot of really bad decisions from young folks, and not just young people. I'm not picking on them, but we do see a lot of our teenagers and our younger people that are making some impulsive decisions that are changing their lives, and they're not thinking them through.
Terrell Bailey, CBS News Detroit. Chief, my question concerning those 14 and 15-year-olds, I guess, what are those conversations like in the department once you apprehend them? What's going through their mind?
A number of things. Sometimes, I mean, we were all 14 and 15, and we didn't have exposure to the things that we have right now, right? I mean, I would not want to be a 14, 15, 16-year-old in this day and age. But they have a phone in their pocket that exposes them to things, at a moment's notice. Whether or not, family, parents know about it is another thing. The high level of social media engagement, the things that we did that at 14 and 15 that, let's just say, was not permanently memorialized like they are now with social media. And then, kids are going to make really bad choices because they're kids. All kids do that. But what we're seeing, is sometimes those conflicts, instead of playing themselves out, in school with a fist fight, sometimes they're playing themselves out with weapons and violence, and they're meeting up at places and doing things that ultimately impact their lives long term. What we're doing, Deputy Chief Sloan this morning was talking to me about the uptick in violence, and she's also seeing a trend with females, young girls that are engaging in high levels of violence and victimization, as someone mentioned earlier. So we have a brotherhood and sisterhood program that works with the different groups and kids and schools, and we're going to be really pushing to have these conversations with young people this year. I'm going to be leaning heavily on the second deputy chief, whose name I mentioned earlier, to go into our schools before they get out for the summer and talk about some programming that we can do to provide with some real life examples of how these young people have impacted their lives, whether they're in custody now, whether they're no longer here because of violence, and let's have not a scared straight, because I don't believe in that, but a real life conversation using real life instances where people have made poor choices that have cost them their lives in one way or the other, and hopefully be able to make an impact that way.
And as for parents and guardians, I guess, is there any tips or anything that you would give them?
Well, get engaged. I mean, know what as a parent, you have to be. You have to know that they've got this powerful cell phone with access to everything in their pocket. Every now and then, ask about it, ask to see it. I mean, talk to them. And if you're one of those parents who was different than mine, who didn't have to see everything that I had, and I didn't have a cell phone growing up, but my mother used to do raids of my room just randomly. But if you're one of those parents that don't engage in that, I think you need to at least have the conversation to say, hey, here's what some are doing, and here's how you don't do it, and just be real with them. I mean, kids can handle it because they're seeing and hearing things all over the place, so I'm sure that they can handle a tough conversation from a parent. All right, thank you, everybody.